This is an audiobook, The Unbreakable Mind, How to Master Your Emotions, Overcome Fear, Stress, and Self-Doubt. Introduction, The Architect of the Inner World. In an era accelerating at a breakneck speed, a whirlwind of ceaseless communication, escalating demands, and an ever-present digital cacophony, many of us seek strength in external striving. We feel the silent pressure of the curated perfection scrolling past on our screens and are ceaselessly urged to outpace, to outperform, to erect colossal achievements upon foundations that feel perpetually unstable. There is a deep, unspoken anxiety that all our hard-won progress could vanish in a moment of weakness. So, we chase the promotion, the accolade, the next milestone on the horizon, believing that with each external victory, we will finally import a sense of internal peace. We treat our minds like a fortress under siege, frantically patching the walls as new attacks arrive, forever reacting to the chaos of the outside world. This is the exhausting life of the watchman who never sleeps, forever scanning the horizon for the next threat. Yet, this is a flawed battle plan. It is a strategy of defense, not of command. The true titans of enduring impact, the profound minds who shape history and their own destinies, understand a more fundamental principle. They recognize that authentic power does not emerge from the frenzy of reaction, but from the deliberate, intentional architecture of one's inner world. They know that the quality of your life is not ultimately determined by the events you face, but by the internal state from which you face them. These individuals are not simply living in the world, they are the architects of the world within. This is the ultimate source of their strength. This is how they build what I call the unbreakable mind. Before we proceed, we must grasp this distinction, for it is everything. Most people are not the architects of their inner world, they are merely its tenants. They inhabit a structure they never designed. This accidental architecture is built from the driftwood of past experiences, cemented by the casual remarks of others, and shaped by the unexamined beliefs inherited from childhood. Its hallways are papered with societal expectations, and its rooms are furnished with fears we never chose to own but now live with every day. It is a mind built by default, and a mind built by default is a mind vulnerable to collapse under pressure. This audiobook is founded on a single, revolutionary premise: you can terminate your tenancy and claim your role as the architect. You can survey the unstable structure within, thank it for the shelter it has provided, and then begin the meticulous, rewarding work of renovation. You can choose your own blueprints, based on principles of strength and resilience. You can select your own materials, powerful narratives, empowering beliefs, and clarifying truths. You can consciously design and build an internal edifice of profound stability and quiet confidence. Prestige Mind Collections presents the master framework for that very construction. Welcome to the Unbreakable Mind, How to Master Your Emotions, Overcome Fear, Stress, and Self-Doubt. I am your guide on this journey, and I want to speak to you directly. You have likely picked up this audiobook because you are an individual of ambition and intellect. You understand logic. You can devise strategies, create plans, and execute complex tasks. Yet, you have encountered a recurring and frustrating adversary, one that no amount of external planning seems to defeat. That adversary is your own internal state. It is the sudden wave of performance anxiety that constricts your throat before a crucial presentation. It is the chronic, low-grade stress that hums beneath the surface of your days, draining your energy and blurring your focus. It is the insidious whisper of self-doubt that questions your capabilities precisely when you need them most. It is the echo of past failures that paralyzes you from taking the next bold risk. You have recognized a profound truth: your primary obstacle is not a lack of knowledge or a flawed strategy. Your primary obstacle is internal friction. It is the gap between what you know you can do and what your emotional state allows you to do. For too long, we have been given a false choice regarding our emotions: either be a victim to them, tossed about by every wave of feeling, or suppress them, becoming cold, brittle, and disconnected. Both paths lead to ruin. To be a victim is to live without agency. To be a suppressor is to live without humanity, and the pressure of suppressed emotion will inevitably crack the foundation of your mind when you can least afford it. This audiobook presents a third, more powerful path. The path of the architect. The architect does not fight the storm, they design a structure that can withstand it. The architect does not resent the existence of gravity, they understand its laws and use them to build higher. In the same way, we will not fight your emotions. We will not try to banish fear or pretend stress does not exist. Instead, we will understand them. We will deconstruct them. We will learn their language, their logic, and their triggers. And then, we will re-architect your response to them. This is the key to genuine mental fortitude. It is the art of transforming your internal world from a source of friction and doubt into a source of immense power and clarity. This transformation is not a mystery. It is a skill. And like any skill, it can be learned through a systematic process. I have distilled this process into 4 foundational pillars, which will serve as the blueprint for our work together. This is the journey we will embark upon, chapter by chapter. First, we will lay the foundation with the Watchtower, the Art of Detached Observation. Here, you will learn the critical first step of creating space between you and your emotions. I will teach you how to ascend to a place of calm observation in your own mind, watching feelings like anger, anxiety, and doubt arise without being consumed by them. It is the feeling of being the calm eye of your own personal hurricane, a point of stillness from which all chaos can be observed without being swept away by it. This separation is the birthplace of all emotional control. Next, we will proceed to the interrogation, the logic of emotion. Once you can observe your feelings without judgment, you can begin to question them. In this pillar, you will become a detective of your own mind. I will guide you in identifying the hidden assumptions, flawed narratives, and cognitive distortions that fuel your most destructive emotional patterns. We will turn the bright, unflinching light of curiosity onto the shadowy corners of your mind, discovering that many of your most terrifying monsters are merely illusions built on faulty logic. With this understanding, we will then move to the most creative phase of our work, the reframe, the power of narrative control. Here, you will learn that you are the author of your own story. I will share powerful techniques to actively change your emotional responses by consciously changing the meaning you assign to events. This is the alchemy of the mind, the learned skill of turning the lead of painful experience into the gold of wisdom and strength. You will learn to transform setbacks into stepping stones and challenges into opportunities for growth, seizing control of your personal narrative. Finally, we will solidify our construction in the forge, the practice of deliberate action. True confidence is not built by affirmations alone, it is forged in the fire of evidence. This final pillar is about building irrefutable, evidence-based self-belief through tangible accomplishment. Here, in the heat and hammerfall of deliberate action, we will burn away the impurities of doubt. You will learn how to take action despite fear, how to use voluntary exposure to stress to build resilience, and how to create a positive feedback loop where your actions prove your strength, and your strength fuels greater action. Each of these pillars will be illustrated with powerful, verifiable stories of real individuals, explorers, leaders, scientists, and artists, who have used these very principles to navigate immense adversity and achieve the extraordinary. Their lives will serve as our case studies, proving that these concepts are not mere theory but are the practical tools of the world's most effective and resilient minds. This is my promise to you. But it requires a promise in return, your commitment to the process, your courage to be honest with yourself, and your patience to see the work through. This is a partnership. This journey is not a passive experience. It is the active process of taking the tools I provide and building something magnificent within yourself. The result will be a quiet, unshakable confidence, a state of being where you are no longer at the mercy of your internal world, but are its master. The goal is to build a mind so well constructed, so resilient, so clear in its purpose, that it becomes unbreakable. The blueprints are before you. The tools are ready. Together, let us begin the construction. Chapter 1, The Eye of the Hurricane, Mastering the Art of Separation. It begins with a single spark. A critical email lands in your inbox late on a Friday afternoon. A casual, cutting remark is made in a meeting you thought was going well. You see a headline that sends a jolt of pure dread through your body. In that instant, a chemical cascade begins, a process refined over 1,000,000 years of evolution. The world narrows. Your hearing seems to dull, yet your heart thunders in your ears. A heat blooms in your chest and rises into your face. In this moment, you do not have a feeling of anger, or fear, or panic. You are the anger, you are the fear, you are the panic. You have become fused with the emotion, a rider welded to a runaway horse, powerless to do anything but hold on until the frantic gallop is over. This fusion is the default state of the human mind. It is the primal, unexamined reaction that governs the lives of most people on this planet. It is the source of words we later regret, of decisions made in haste that we must repent at leisure, and of the chronic, corrosive stress that comes from feeling perpetually out of control of our own inner world. Every significant mistake you have ever made, every opportunity you have missed due to fear, every relationship you have damaged in a moment of fury, was born in that instant of fusion. To build an unbreakable mind, our first task, the foundational task upon which all others will rest, is to learn how to break it. We must learn the art of separation. To truly understand how to do this, I want to take you to a place where this skill is not a matter of convenience, but of absolute survival. I want to take you 600 feet below the surface of the ocean, into the crushing, lightless deep. Imagine a man, we'll call him Dave. Dave is a saturation diver, one of a handful of elite professionals who live and work under immense pressure for weeks at a time. His home is a pressurized steel habitat on the deck of a ship. His office is a small, two-man diving bell that lowers him to the seafloor. Down there, in a world more alien than the moon, his life depends entirely on a network of hoses and wires connecting him to the surface, an umbilical cord delivering the warm water that keeps him from freezing to death and the precise mixture of helium and oxygen he breathes. His existence is a testament to meticulous procedure and absolute trust in technology. One day, on a routine job, that trust is shattered. As he sits in the bell, preparing for a dive, a piercing alarm shrieks through the tiny chamber. A red light flashes on his console, life support failure. The flow of warm water to his suit and, more critically, to the bell's heating system, has stopped. Instantly, the oppressive, comfortable warmth begins to bleed away, replaced by a profound, invasive cold that feels malevolent. The temperature inside the steel chamber begins to plummet, and Dave knows that hypothermia is not a distant threat, it is minutes away. In the crushing dark, 1,000 miles from home, his world has just shrunk to this freezing metal sphere. In this moment, two paths diverge in his mind. The first path is fusion. It is the path of panic, a frantic, adrenaline-fueled scramble. He could scream into his microphone, hammer on the walls, and let the sheer terror of his situation consume him. His heart rate would skyrocket, his breathing would become shallow and ragged, and he would burn through precious energy, hastening the cold's victory. This is the animal reaction. It is what his body, flooded with fear, is screaming at him to do. It is a path that ends in certain death. But there is a second path. It requires something almost superhuman. It is the path of separation. Dave feels the terror. It is a physical presence, a cold knot in his stomach that mirrors the lethal chill seeping through the walls. He feels the primal urge to scream, to thrash, to do something. But instead of fusing with it, he performs a subtle, internal maneuver of incredible power. He mentally takes one step back. He acknowledges the feeling of fear, he even gives it a name, but he does not become it. He isolates it, observes it as he would observe a faulty gauge, and then deliberately turns his attention to what matters. Surface, he says into his microphone, his voice tight but controlled. I have a life support alarm. Heating system is offline. Internal temperature is dropping. He reports facts, not feelings. He then methodically works through his emergency checklist, his gloved hands moving with purpose despite the encroaching cold. He is conserving heat, conserving energy, and most importantly, conserving his rational mind. He is no longer the terrified man in the freezing box. He has become the calm, professional operator managing the situation of a terrified man in a freezing box. This act of detached observation, this art of separation, is what keeps him alive long enough for the surface crew to solve the problem. You may not be a diver trapped in the crushing deep, but you face your own life support emergencies every day. A sudden financial crisis, a betrayal by a partner, a negative performance review, these are your freezing, dark chambers. In those moments, your survival, the survival of your career, your relationships, your well-being, depends on your ability to choose the second path. The legendary psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl wrote, "Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. This space is the most valuable piece of real estate in your inner world. For most people, this space is infinitesimally small. A stimulus occurs, the insulting email, and the response, rage, is instantaneous. The fusion is immediate. The goal of this first pillar, the Watchtower, is to widen that space. When you master the art of separation, you create a buffer zone. You build a mental watchtower where your true self, your conscious, rational mind, can reside. From this elevated vantage point, you can watch the weather of your emotions roll in. You can see the storm clouds of anger gathering on the horizon, you can feel the cold front of fear approaching, you can witness the heavy fog of sadness descending. But because you are in the watchtower, you are not in the storm. You are not soaked by the rain or battered by the wind. You are the observer, and this fundamental shift from being the participant in the chaos to being the observer of it is the beginning of all wisdom and the foundation of an unbreakable mind. This ability to stay calm under pressure is not a gift you are born with. It is a skill you cultivate. It is the result of learning to see your feelings not as absolute truths, but as transient data. Your anger is telling you a boundary may have been crossed. Your anxiety is telling you to prepare for a future threat. These are important signals, but they are not executive commands. You are the executive. For now, I am not asking you to change your response. I am not even asking you to attempt to control your emotions. The first step is far simpler. For the next few days, I want you to practice one thing, simply noticing. When a strong emotion arises, simply make a quiet, internal note. Ah, there is anger. This is the feeling of anxiety. I recognize this, it is self-doubt. Do not judge it. Do not fight it. Simply name it, as if you were a scientist identifying a specimen. Your only task is to notice the moment of fusion, that instant when the emotion tries to become you. To simply know that the space between stimulus and response exists is the first great revelation. It is the discovery of a hidden door in a prison cell. But to be able to open that door at will, to build a permanent home in that space of calm observation, requires discipline and tools. You must learn how to hold your focus there, even when the storm rages. That is the work we will begin in our next chapter. We will explore the Sentinel's discipline and forge the mental focus required to truly master this art. Chapter 2, The Sentinel's Discipline, Forging Your Focus. In our last chapter, we made the single most important discovery on this journey, the existence of the space between stimulus and response. You now know that this space, this watchtower of the mind, is real. It is your rightful place of power, a sanctuary of calm observation. Yet, knowing a sanctuary exists and being able to stay there when the hurricane makes landfall are two very different things. The initial thrill of this discovery can quickly be followed by a frustrating reality. The moment you try to stand in that space, your mind, unaccustomed to stillness, rebels. It bombards you with 1,000 distractions, a swarm of thoughts, worries, and impulses that can shatter your calm and pull you back into the storm. Discovering the watchtower is the work of an explorer. Learning to occupy it is the work of a sentinel. An explorer finds the territory, but a sentinel guards it. This requires a new capacity, one that is not passive, but active, muscular, and intentional. It requires a focused mind, and focus, in our modern world, is a superpower. The truth is, your attention is the raw currency of your life. Whatever you bestow it upon, grows. To build an unbreakable mind, you must learn to command this currency with an iron will. You must forge a sentinel's discipline. To understand this discipline, let us leave the freezing depths of the ocean and enter a place of immense heat and pressure of a different kind, the stage of a world-renowned concert hall. Imagine a woman, we'll call her Isabel. Isabel is a concert pianist at the peak of her profession. Tonight, she sits before a gleaming black grand piano, the warmth of 1,000 spotlights on her face. Before her, a sea of expectant faces fades into the velvet darkness. There is a profound, weighted silence in the hall, a silence that seems to contain all the hope and judgment of the thousands of people present. She is about to perform a notoriously difficult concerto, a piece that demands not only flawless technical precision but also a depth of emotional vulnerability that can leave a performer feeling utterly exposed. For the next 30 minutes, she must be perfect. Her challenge is not merely the complex arrangement of notes. Her true adversaries are the 10,000 distractions that wait for her in the silence. Some are external, the rustle of a program, a distant siren, a thoughtless cough from the third row that could break her concentration at a critical moment. But the most dangerous enemies are internal. There is the ghost of a single wrong note she played in rehearsal yesterday, a memory that threatens to sow seeds of doubt. There is the voice of a harsh critic whose review she read that morning. And then there is the primal voice of performance anxiety itself, whispering, "You are an imposter. You will fail. Everyone is watching you." Her heart is pounding, a frantic drumbeat against the silence. This is a moment where fusion is not just possible, but probable. Yet, Isabel does not panic. She has trained for this moment as rigorously as an elite soldier. She has a discipline. As she places her fingers on the keys, she does not think about the audience, the critics, or the possibility of failure. She executes the first part of her sentinel's discipline. She brings her entire universe of awareness to a single, chosen point. Her anchor. For her, it is the physical sensation of the cool, smooth ivory beneath her fingertips. She feels its texture, its temperature, its solid reality. This is her ground. She begins to play. The music flows into the hall. A few minutes in, an intrusive thought arrives, unbidden. That last passage was not as fluid as it should have been. The old Isabel would have fused with that thought. She would have dwelled on the minor imperfection, which would have created anxiety, which in turn would have tightened her muscles and guaranteed more mistakes. But the new Isabel, the Sentinel, performs the second part of her discipline. She acknowledges the thought, without judgment, as if noticing a cloud passing in the sky. She gives it a simple, silent label, critique, and then, gently but firmly, returns her focus to her anchor, the feeling of her fingers on the keys, the flow of the music now, in this present moment. A cough erupts from the audience. Again, she acknowledges the external sound, labels it, distraction, and immediately returns her full attention to her anchor. Throughout the entire performance, this process repeats itself dozens of times. A worry about the future is labeled and released. A memory from the past is labeled and released. She is the unwavering sentinel at the gate of her own mind. She is not trying to create an empty mind, that is impossible. She is creating a focused mind. She is choosing, moment by moment, where to place the spotlight of her attention. She finishes the concerto, not because she was free from distractions, but because she was disciplined in her response to them. Isabel's stage is your life. Her discipline can be your discipline. The tools she uses are not exclusive to world-class performers, they are fundamental human technologies for forging focus. Here are the Sentinel's tools, which you can begin to practice today. Tool 1, the anchor. Just as Isabel used the sensation of the keys, you must choose a neutral anchor point for your awareness. It should be a simple, physical sensation that is always available to you. The most reliable is the feeling of your breath moving in and out of your body. You might feel the air at the tip of your nostrils, or the rise and fall of your chest and abdomen. Another powerful anchor is the feeling of your feet flat on the floor, their pressure, their temperature, their solid connection to the ground. Your anchor is your tether to the present moment. Anxious thoughts almost always live in the imagined future, regretful thoughts live in the rewritten past. The present moment, accessed through your physical senses, is the only place where you are safe from them. It is your home base. Tool 2, labeling and releasing. Your mind's job is to produce thoughts. You cannot stop it, any more than you can stop your heart from beating. The discipline is not in stopping the thoughts, but in changing your relationship to them. When a thought, worry, or memory arises and tries to pull you from your anchor, your job is to notice it and give it a simple, one-word, non-judgmental label. If you find yourself worrying about an upcoming meeting, you can silently say to yourself, worrying, or planning. If a memory of an old argument appears, you can label it remembering. Then, having labeled it, you gently and deliberately guide your attention back to your anchor. The goal is not to push the thought away, but to let it go. You are not fighting the thought, you are simply choosing not to serve it tea. Tool 3, the intentional breath. Your mind and body are a single, interconnected system. When your mind is agitated, your breathing becomes shallow and rapid. When your breathing is calm and deep, your mind begins to settle. You can use this connection to your advantage. The simplest and most powerful technique is called box breathing. It is used by everyone from Navy SEALs to surgeons to calm their nervous system and enhance focus. The practice is simple: inhale slowly for a count of 4. Hold your breath for a count of 4. Exhale slowly for a count of 4. Hold the breath out for a count of 4. Repeat. This rhythmic, intentional breathing pattern forces your body out of the fight or flight response and into a state of calm alertness. It is a manual override for your body's panic button. These tools are not magic spells. They are instruments of mental conditioning. Forging your focus is a practice, like strengthening a muscle. You would not go to the gym once and expect to be strong for life. Likewise, you must practice this Sentinel's discipline regularly, especially in low-stakes situations. Practice anchoring for 60 seconds while you wait for your coffee to brew. Practice labeling your thoughts while you are stuck in traffic. Practice a few rounds of box breathing before you open your email in the morning. By building this muscle in moments of calm, you ensure it will be strong enough to hold when the storms of life inevitably arrive. You have now moved from being a mere discoverer of the Watchtower to being its active, armed sentinel. You have the foundational discipline to create and hold a space of calm, focused awareness. But a new, profound question arises. Now that you can observe your thoughts and feelings without being consumed by them, what are you supposed to do about them? Are these thoughts that you are so calmly observing actually true? Are the stories they tell you valid? Observing the storm from the Watchtower is the first step. Understanding the nature of the storm itself is the next. This requires us to leave the role of the sentinel and take on the role of the detective. This brings us to the next stage of our work, the interrogation. Chapter 3, The Detective of the Mind, Deconstructing the Lies You Tell Yourself. You have learned to stand as a sentinel in the watchtower of your mind. You can create the crucial space between stimulus and response, and you possess the discipline to hold your focus even as the storms of emotion rage around you. This is a monumental achievement. But as you stand at this calm, observational post, new, more profound question begins to emerge. As you watch the endless parade of thoughts march across your consciousness, the worries, the criticisms, the catastrophic predictions, you must ask. Are these thoughts true? What gives them such power over me? The answer is belief. A thought is just a whisper, but a thought you believe is a command. We treat every thought that enters our mind as a sworn testimony, without ever cross-examining the witness. Our feelings, you see, are not random. They are deeply logical. They are the direct, unavoidable consequence of the stories we believe. If you believe you are in danger, you will feel fear. If you believe you have been wronged, you will feel anger. If you believe you are inadequate, you will feel shame. The logic of emotion is flawless. The problem is that we build these powerful emotional conclusions on a foundation of unexamined, often fraudulent, evidence. Today, we stop giving these thoughts a free pass. Today, we become the detective. To learn how to interrogate our own internal evidence, we must look to a man who took on the biggest financial lie in modern history, a man who refused to believe a story that the entire world had accepted as gospel. His name was Harry Markopolos, and the lie he dismantled was the colossal Ponzi scheme of Bernie Madoff. In the early 2000s, Bernie Madoff was a titan of Wall Street. His investment fund was the stuff of legend, delivering impossibly consistent, impossibly high returns, year after year, whether the market was booming or crashing. The story was perfect. Madoff was a genius, a financial magician, and the world's most sophisticated investors, banks, and regulators all believed it. It was, for all intents and purposes, a fact. But when Markopolos, a lesser-known financial analyst, looked at the numbers, he didn't feel envy or admiration. He felt a single, calm, powerful question bubble up in his mind: how? This question was the beginning of his interrogation. He knew that Madoff's claimed strategy, a complex options trading formula, should leave a public footprint. Like a detective looking for fingerprints at a crime scene, Markopolos scoured the public markets for evidence of the trades Madoff should have been making. He found nothing. There were no prints. He then tried to replicate the strategy himself on paper. He proved, mathematically, that it was impossible to generate those kinds of returns without taking on massive risks that were nowhere to be seen. The story didn't add up. For nearly a decade, Markopolos presented his evidence to regulators and journalists. He was ignored, dismissed, and ridiculed. Why? Because the world was engaged in a collective form of what we call confirmation bias. They wanted the story to be true, so they ignored all evidence to the contrary. But Markopoulos was a detective. He was not emotional. He did not care about popular opinion. He cared only about the evidence. He calmly trusted his analysis over the world's delusion and continued his work, knowing that a structure built on lies, no matter how magnificent it appears, must eventually collapse. And in 2008, it did, spectacularly. You have a Madoff in your mind. We all do. It is that inner voice that produces its own brand of impossibly consistent returns of anxiety, self-doubt, and fear. It runs a fraudulent accounting system that magnifies your losses and minimizes your wins. The pervasive feeling of imposter syndrome, for example, is a classic product of this inner fraudster. It pays out steady dividends of anxiety by convincing you that your successes are all flukes and that you are just one step away from being exposed. To dismantle this inner fraud, you must become your own Harry Markopoulos. You must learn to spot the tactics it uses, the specific, repeatable thinking errors known as cognitive distortions. These are the fingerprints of a fraudulent thought. Let us examine some of the most common tactics used by your inner con artist. First, is the tactic of mind reading. This is the confident assertion that you know exactly what others are thinking, usually about you. You walk past a colleague who seems distracted and your mind delivers a verdict. He thinks my idea was foolish. You send a message that isn't immediately answered and the story writes itself, I have offended them. You are acting on a conclusion for which you have zero evidence, yet you experience the emotional fallout as if it were an established fact. Second, is the notorious tactic of catastrophizing. This is the skill of taking a minor, isolated setback and projecting it into a world-ending disaster. You make a small mistake in a report, and the catastrophic thought isn't I should fix that. It is, I'm going to be fired. I'll lose my house. I'm a total failure. The fraudster takes a single drop of rain and convinces you that a biblical flood is imminent. Third, is perhaps the most insidious tactic, emotional reasoning. This is the core of Madoff's appeal, it feels true, so it must be true. Your inner Madoff whispers, if you feel like an imposter, it's because you are one. If you feel anxious, it proves there must be something to be afraid of. This distortion uses your own feelings as false evidence to justify the very thoughts that created them, trapping you in a self-perpetuating loop of negativity. You are being convinced that the symptom is the disease. These distortions, and there are many others, like black and white thinking where everything is either a total success or an utter failure, are the tools of deception. To stop negative thoughts from running your life, you must first learn to identify these limiting beliefs by spotting the distortions they use. You must learn to challenge your assumptions. So how do you do this? You do it by creating your own detective's toolkit. Like Markopoulos, you don't need to be emotional, you just need to be methodical. When you are in your watchtower and you observe a powerful negative thought, you do not have to believe it or fight it. You can simply detain it for questioning. You can subject it to a simple, 3-question interrogation. Question 1. What is the hard, objective evidence for this thought? Be ruthless. Feelings are not evidence. Other people's imagined thoughts are not evidence. What are the cold, hard facts of the situation? If the thought is I am a total failure, what is the actual, verifiable evidence for such an extreme statement? Write it down as if preparing a case for court. You will often find the evidence is shockingly flimsy. Question 2. What is the evidence against this thought? This is the direct antidote to confirmation bias. Actively search for the contradictory data. If the thought is I ruin everything I touch, you must force yourself to list projects you have completed, successes you have enjoyed, and people you have helped. Markopolos couldn't find evidence of Madoff's trades, so he concluded they didn't exist. You must search for your own counter-evidence, which you will find in abundance. Question 3. What is a more rational, compassionate, and less extreme interpretation of this situation? This question helps you formulate a new, more truthful narrative. A mistake in a report doesn't mean I'm a total failure. A more rational interpretation is, I am a human who made an error, and now I have an opportunity to correct it and learn from it. A person not replying to your message doesn't mean they are offended. A more rational interpretation is, they are busy, and have 100 other things in their life besides my message. This 3-question interrogation is your new discipline. When you feel that old, familiar pang of anxiety or self-doubt, you now have a procedure. You ascend to the Watchtower to observe it. You use your Sentinel's focus to hold your ground. And then you deploy your detective's toolkit to dismantle the lie that is causing the feeling. By doing this, you expose the fraudulent thoughts for what they are, empty stories. You create a vacuum where the lie used to be. But a vacuum is empty. Nature, and the mind, abhor a vacuum. It is not enough to simply know what is false. We must consciously and deliberately fill that newly cleared space with something new, something powerful, something of our own design. This is no longer the work of a detective who deconstructs. It is the work of an architect who creates. And that brings us to our next great pillar, the reframe. Chapter 4, The Scribe of the Soul, Seizing Control of Your Story. You have done the hard work of the detective. You have learned to question the validity of your own thoughts, to see the subtle distortions and outright lies that your mind can produce. You have exposed the inner con artist. But this exposure, as crucial as it is, leaves you standing in a vacuum. A belief, once shattered, leaves behind an empty space. And the human mind, like nature itself, abhors a vacuum. If you do not consciously and deliberately fill that space with a new, empowering story, the old lies will creep back in, or worse, new, random anxieties will rush to fill the void. This brings us to a foundational truth of the unbreakable mind, a principle so profound it can change the very fabric of your reality in an instant. Events in your life have no inherent meaning. None. A job loss is not inherently a catastrophe. A rejection is not inherently a judgment on your worth. A failure is not inherently a final verdict. These are simply events. They are the raw, objective data of your life. The meaning, the story that makes an event either a crushing tragedy or a defining opportunity, is something that you provide. You are the author. You are the scribe of your soul, and your greatest power is the narrative you choose to write. To understand this profound power to assign meaning, we must travel to ancient Japan and explore a beautiful, centuries-old art form born from this very philosophy. It is called kintsugi, which translates to golden joinery. In the Western world, when a cherished ceramic bowl is dropped and shatters into pieces, we typically have two responses. The first is to sweep the pieces into the dustbin. The object is broken, its perfection is lost, and therefore, its value is gone. The second is to meticulously glue the pieces back together, trying our best to hide the cracks, to pretend the damage never happened, to restore it to its former, perfect state. Think for a moment how closely this mirrors our own relationship with our personal failures and traumas. We either discard the parts of ourselves that have been hurt, or we spend our lives trying to hide the scars, pretending we were never broken at all. Kintsugi offers a third, more enlightened path. When a precious tea bowl is shattered, a kintsugi master does not see the event as an end. They see it as a new beginning in the object's history. They painstakingly collect the broken shards and, over many weeks, rejoin them. But they do not use invisible glue. They use a special lacquer mixed with shimmering, powdered gold. The finished piece does not hide its history of being broken. Instead, it highlights it. The cracks are now intricate veins of pure gold, more beautiful and arresting than any part of the original, unbroken vessel. The story of the damage has been transformed into the most celebrated feature of the object. It is now more valuable, more resilient, and more beautiful because it was broken and consciously repaired. You are the ceramic bowl. Your life will inevitably bring shocks, pressures, and impacts that can leave you feeling shattered. Your setbacks, your heartbreaks, your failures, your moments of deep shame, these are your cracks. The question is, what will you do with the pieces? Will you throw them away, identifying as a broken person? Will you try to hide the cracks, living in fear of being seen as imperfect? Or will you practice the kintsugi of the soul? Will you learn to pick up the pieces, take out your brush, and paint your scars with gold? This is the art of the perspective shift. This is the practical core of narrative control. You cannot change the events of your past, but you have absolute power to change what they mean for your future. This is not about lying to yourself or engaging in baseless, happy-clappy affirmations. This is about consciously choosing the most empowering, resilient, and useful interpretation of the facts. This is the foundation of building confidence from the rubble of failure. Modern psychology has a name for the stories we write. It's called our explanatory style. It is the habitual way in which you explain the causes of bad events to yourself. The scribe of the soul has two distinct styles it can adopt. The first is the pessimistic, untrained scribe. This is our default programming. When faced with a setback, say, a failed project at work, this scribe writes the story using three toxic inks: permanent, pervasive, and personal. The permanent narrative says, "This is forever. I'll never be successful at this." The pervasive narrative says, "This ruins everything. My whole career is a disaster now." And the personal narrative says, "It's all my fault. I am fundamentally incompetent." This style of storytelling takes a single crack and paints it with the lacquer of despair, guaranteeing that the break weakens the entire structure of your self-esteem. But there is another way. The second style is that of the trained, optimistic scribe, the kintsugi master of the mind. This scribe deliberately chooses to interpret the very same event using three golden inks: temporary, specific, and non-personal. The temporary narrative says, "This was a painful setback, but it is a passing phase. It is a chapter, not the whole book." The specific narrative says, "This particular project failed due to specific, identifiable reasons. It does not reflect on all other areas of my work." And the non-personal narrative says, "The circumstances were challenging, my approach had flaws, but this is not a reflection of my inherent worth as a person. It is a reflection of a strategy that didn't work." Do you see the profound difference? The event is identical. The failure is real. But the story, the meaning, is a conscious choice. One story leads to helplessness and despair. The other leads to resilience and learning. One scribe creates a fragile vessel that will shatter again at the slightest touch. The kintsugi master creates a work of art, strengthened by its history. This is how to reframe your thoughts. You are not denying the crack, you are choosing to make it a source of beauty and strength. This is the essence of a truly positive mindset. It is not about ignoring the negative, but about finding a way to integrate it into a more powerful whole. This power of narrative is absolute. The story you tell yourself about your life dictates the emotions you will feel, the actions you will take, and ultimately, the person you will become. When you find meaning in suffering or overcome failure through narrative, you are performing the most powerful alchemy known to humankind. You are turning the lead of raw experience into the gold of wisdom. It is one thing to stand back and admire the profound philosophy of kintsugi. It is another thing entirely to become the master craftsman yourself. To know that you can change the story is a liberating first step. But to be able to do it consistently, especially under the intense pressure of fresh failure or acute pain when the pieces of your life feel scattered at your feet, requires specific, powerful, and practical techniques. We need more than just the philosophy, we need the master's tools. We need the golden lacquer and the fine-haired brush. And that is where we turn next. We must now learn the practical application of this philosophy. We must learn the specific methods for the alchemy of perspective. Chapter 5, The Alchemy of Perspective, Turning Lead into Gold. In the last chapter, we stood in awe of a profound and liberating idea, that we are the scribes of our own souls, the authors of our own meaning. We learned that the cracks of our lives do not have to be sources of shame, but can be traced with gold, becoming sources of beauty and strength. This philosophy is the blueprint for a resilient mind. But a blueprint is not the building. Today, we pick up the tools. We move from the philosopher's study to the alchemist's workshop. Here, we will learn the practical, tangible techniques for turning the lead of raw, painful experience into the gold of wisdom and unbreakable confidence. Think of your mind as a lens through which you view the world. For most of us, this lens is not perfectly clear. It is smudged by past failures, distorted by old fears, and colored by the beliefs we inherited but never chose. We walk through life believing the distorted image we see is reality. The work of the alchemist is to consciously and deliberately regrind that lens, to clean off the smudges, polish out the distortions, and choose the tint that serves us best. This is the art of the cognitive reframing. It is the most powerful magic you will ever learn. To see this alchemy in action, let us consider the story of a man who faced a failure so complete, it would have been the final chapter for almost anyone else. His name was Harlan Sanders. By the time he was 65 years old, Sanders had built a reasonably successful life. He owned a popular roadside motel and cafe in Corbin, Kentucky, famous for its delicious fried chicken, prepared with a secret recipe of 11 herbs and spices. He was a respected local businessman. He had, by most measures, made it. Then, one day, the government announced the construction of a new interstate highway, a superhighway that would bypass his motel completely. Almost overnight, the steady stream of traffic that was his business's lifeblood vanished. His enterprise, the work of a lifetime, withered and died. At an age when most people are planning their retirement, Harlan Sanders was broke, his future decimated, with nothing to his name but a small social security check and a recipe for fried chicken. This was a moment of shattering failure. The bowl was broken. Let us imagine the story the default, pessimistic scribe would have written. The permanent narrative, I'm too old to start over. It's finished. The pervasive narrative, the world has moved on without me. Everything I've ever built is gone. The personal narrative, I am a failure. I have nothing left. This is the story of despair, an entirely logical and understandable narrative that would have led him to a quiet, bitter, and impoverished end. It is the story most people would have written. But Harlan Sanders was an alchemist. He picked up the shattered pieces of his life and performed a monumental act of reframing. Instead of focusing on what was lost, the motel, the cafe, the career, he performed a ruthless inventory and focused on the single, unique asset he still possessed, the secret recipe. He deliberately changed the core definition of himself. He was not Harlan Sanders, the failed restaurateur. In his new story, he became Colonel Sanders, the owner of a world-class recipe in search of partners. This was not a lie, it was a strategic and empowering reframe of the facts. With this new narrative fueling him, he took his first social security check, got in his car, and began driving across the country. His plan was to sell his recipe to other restaurant owners in exchange for a small percentage of their sales. He was rejected. Again, and again, and again. The story goes that he was rejected over 1,000 times. Now, imagine the mental alchemy required to endure that. Each no was a new, painful event. For the pessimistic scribe, each rejection would be further proof of the I am a failure story. But for the colonel, each rejection was reframed. It was not a verdict on his recipe or his worth. It was simply feedback. It was a data point. This is not the right partner, he would tell himself. I am simply one step closer to the person who will say yes. He was turning the lead of rejection into the gold of resilience. We all know how the story ends. He found that first partner, and then another, and another. The man who was broke at 65 built one of the largest and most recognizable food empires on the planet, Kentucky Fried Chicken. His success was not born from a lack of failure. It was born from his masterful ability to turn failure into success by changing the story he told himself about it. The colonel's resilience was not a magical personality trait. It was a disciplined mental process. You can learn to do the same. Here are 3 powerful tools from the Alchemist's workshop to help you practice positive self-talk and forge your own empowering beliefs. Tool 1, the perspective shift, the as-if frame. When you are trapped in a problem, your perspective narrows and you can only see the immediate threat. This tool forcibly breaks that tunnel vision. Take the problem you are facing and ask yourself one of these questions: how would the person I most admire in the world view this situation? Or, even more powerfully, how would my wisest, future self, 10 years from now, look back on this moment? This simple act of imagination lifts you out of your current, panicked state and allows you to borrow the wisdom, calm, and perspective of a more resourceful mind. That future you knows that this, too, shall pass. That future you sees the lesson that you can't see yet. By asking the question, you access that wisdom now. Tool 2, the asset inventory, the colonel's recipe frame. When you suffer a setback or a loss, your mind's natural tendency is to focus on the deficit, on what is now gone. This tool reverses that flow of attention. When a project fails, a relationship ends, or a plan goes awry, sit down with a pen and paper and conduct a ruthless inventory of what remains. What assets do you still possess? Your skills. Your knowledge. Your health. Your character. Your relationships with other people. Your past successes. Even just the lessons you learned from the very failure you are facing. Like Colonel Sanders ignoring his lost restaurant to focus on his one recipe, this exercise forces you to operate from a position of resourcefulness, not of lack. It reminds you that you are never left with nothing. Tool 3, the definitional reframe, changing the label. Words are not just descriptors, they are commands. The label you put on a situation dictates the entire suite of emotions and physiological responses you will have to it. This technique is about consciously choosing more empowering labels. Did you just experience a catastrophic failure, or did you just run a successful experiment that produced an unexpected result? Are you facing a terrifying problem, or are you facing an interesting challenge? Did you receive painful rejection, or did you receive valuable feedback? Changing the word changes the world. A rejection is a final verdict that invalidates you. Feedback is useful data that informs your next move. It is the same event, but a different label creates a profoundly different reality. These reframing techniques require practice. They will feel awkward at first, like writing with your non-dominant hand. Your brain is used to running the old, pessimistic stories. Your job is to deliberately and repeatedly offer it a new one. Start small. Reframe your frustration when you're stuck in traffic. Use the asset inventory when you misplace your keys. Use the perspective shift when you have a minor disagreement. Build resilience in these small moments, so the skill is there for you when the big moments arrive. With this, the third pillar of our work is complete. You have journeyed from the Watchtower of Observation, through the interrogation room of Deconstruction, and now have graduated from the alchemist's workshop of Reconstruction. You have the full mental blueprint to observe your thoughts without being ruled by them, dismantle the ones that are false, and rewrite the stories of your life to serve your highest good. Your inner world has been re-architected for strength. But a blueprint, no matter how perfect, is not a building. A mindset, no matter how resilient, is not a life. The final, crucial, and most exhilarating step is to take this newly forged inner world and test it, to prove its strength against the glorious friction of reality. True, unbreakable confidence is not built in thought alone. It is forged in the fire of action. It is time to enter the forge. Chapter 6, The First Step into the Fire, How to Act When You Are Afraid. We have traveled far. You have ascended to the Watchtower, becoming the calm observer of your inner world. You have entered the interrogation room, becoming the detective who deconstructs false beliefs. You have stood in the alchemist's workshop, becoming the scribe who rewrites your own narrative with gold. Your mind has been re-architected. The blueprint is flawless, the materials are sound, the design is resilient. And yet, there is a vast and silent canyon that separates even the most perfect inner world from a life well lived. That canyon is the gap between insight and action. It is carved by the river of fear. You can have the most unbreakable mindset in the world, but it is nothing more than a beautiful theory until it is tested against the friction of reality. This is the moment many people falter. They have done the internal work, but the fear of taking the first step, of making the call, of publishing the article, of having the difficult conversation, of walking into the gym, remains. They are waiting for the fear to vanish before they act. But the unbreakable mind knows a secret: you will never be ready. The fear does not vanish. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the judgment that something else is more important than fear. Courage is acting in the presence of fear. It is taking that first step into the fire. To understand the mechanics of this courage, we must turn to the story of a man who was born to be a symbol of strength for his nation, but who was privately crippled by a profound and paralyzing fear. This was Prince Albert, Duke of York, the man the world would come to know as King George VI of England. From childhood, Albert, or Bertie as his family called him, was plagued by a severe and debilitating stammer. For a private citizen, this would be a difficult cross to bear. For a member of the royal family, whose life was a series of public appearances and speeches, it was a waking nightmare. Each public utterance was a minefield of potential humiliation. The fear was not just psychological, it was a physical cage. His throat would constrict, his jaw would lock, and the words he so desperately wanted to say would remain trapped within him. He was a prisoner in his own body, and his fear of speaking was absolute. His natural inclination was avoidance. He sought to remain in the shadows, to evade the duties that terrified him. But destiny had other plans. When his elder brother abdicated the throne, Bertie was thrust into the one role he never wanted, king. Now, the voice of a nation rested in the throat of a man who could not speak. As war with Nazi Germany loomed, his country needed a voice of reassurance and strength, and his personal terror was now a matter of geopolitical significance. This is the point of paralysis. The fear was overwhelming, the stakes were impossibly high. But it is here that he took his first, agonizing step into the fire. It was not a grand gesture. It was a small, deeply humbling act of courage. He agreed to see an unconventional Australian speech therapist named Lionel Logue. For a man of his stature, this was a profound admission of vulnerability. It was an acknowledgement that he could not win this battle alone. This first step was the key that unlocked everything. Logue's methods were not about simply trying harder. They were a series of small, deliberate actions designed to build evidence against the fear. He had the king sing the words, as singing uses a different part of the brain. He had him swear to release tension. He had him wear headphones playing loud music while he read, so he could not hear his own voice falter. Each of these strange exercises was a small controlled fire. Each time the king completed one, he gathered a tiny piece of evidence that his fear was not all-powerful. He was building, action by action, a case for his own capability. The ultimate test came on September 3, 1939, when he had to deliver a 9-minute radio address, announcing that Britain was at war. As he approached the microphone in a small, stark room, the fear was not gone. It was there, a cold dread in the pit of his stomach. But now, it was not the only thing present. Alongside the fear was the evidence of his practice, the memory of his small victories with Logue, and the profound sense of his duty. He did not walk to the microphone fearless. He walked to the microphone afraid, and did it anyway. And as he spoke, his voice, though not perfectly fluid, was clear, calm, and resolute. He had stepped through the fire and found he was not consumed. You may not have to address an empire, but you have your own radio address to give. It is that business you have been dreaming of launching, that creative project gathering dust, that difficult conversation you have been avoiding. Your paralysis comes from the same place as the king's. You are staring at the enormity of the final performance. The secret is to focus only on the first, small, actionable step. Here are the tools to help you do it. Tool 1, the 5-second rule, the activation switch. Fear and doubt are assassins of action, but they are not fast. When you have an instinct to act on a goal, to speak up in a meeting, to put on your running shoes, to start writing, your mind gives you a brief, 5-second window before it floods the zone with hesitation and kills the impulse. This rule, popularized by author Mel Robbins, is a tool of pure disruption. The moment you feel the instinct to act, you start counting down from 5. 5. 4. 3. 2. 1, and on go, you physically move. You do not think, you do not hesitate, you move. This is not a mind trick, it is a physiological one. It interrupts the habit of hesitation and launches you into motion before the feeling of fear can take root. Tool 2, the courage of the first draft, shrink the target. The fear of imperfection is a primary cause of paralysis. We imagine the flawless finished product, and because the gap between our current state and that perfection is so vast, we do nothing. The solution is to give yourself permission to be spectacularly imperfect. Shrink the target until it is laughably easy. Your goal is not to write a book, it is to write one terrible page. Your goal is not to get in shape, it is to put on your workout clothes and stand outside your front door. Your goal is not to start a business, it is to spend 5 minutes searching for a potential competitor's website. By making the first step absurdly small, you rob the fear of its power. You are not stepping into a roaring inferno, you are stepping over a single candle. Tool 3, the evidence log, your case for courage. Your confidence is not a mood, it is a reputation you build with yourself. Every time you act in the face of fear, you make a deposit in your confidence account. To make this tangible, you must become the archivist of your own courage. Get a notebook, a physical one. This is your evidence log. Each day, at the end of the day, write down one instance where you acted despite fear, hesitation, or resistance. I was afraid to make that sales call, but I did it anyway. I wanted to stay on the couch, but I went for a 10-minute walk. I was afraid to share my idea, but I unmuted myself and spoke. Over time, this log becomes an undeniable, empirical record of your own strength. It is your personal dossier proving that you are the kind of person who steps into the fire. When the voice of doubt whispers that you are a coward, you can open the book and show it the evidence. Action is the engine of the unbreakable mind. It is the force that turns insight into character. Confidence is not a prerequisite for taking these steps, it is the inevitable consequence. The more evidence you collect, the stronger your belief in yourself becomes. You are creating a positive feedback loop. Courage generates action, action generates evidence, and evidence generates authentic, unshakable confidence. You have now learned to get the flywheel turning. You have learned how to overcome the initial, paralyzing resistance of fear. But what if you could go further? What if you could become so strong that the fires that once terrified you now feel like a comfortable warmth? What if you could deliberately use hardship as the very tool to forge a level of resilience that makes you nearly invincible? That is the final stage of our work. It is time to learn the secrets of the Spartan's shield. Chapter 7, The Spartan's Shield, Building Resilience Through Deliberate Hardship. You have come so far. You have learned to face your fear and take that first, crucial step into the fire. You have proven to yourself that you can act even when you are afraid. This is the foundation of courage. But now, we ascend to the final, highest level of mental training. We move beyond simply enduring hardship to actively seeking it out as a tool for growth. Our entire modern society is engaged in a relentless, noble-seeming pursuit of a life without friction. We crave comfort, convenience, and predictability. But what if this pursuit of an easy life is the very thing that is making us fragile? What if the secret to an unbreakable mind lies not in avoiding difficulty, but in deliberately and strategically embracing it? There is a concept known as being anti-fragile. A teacup is fragile, under stress, it shatters. A steel beam is resilient, under stress, it bends but returns to its original shape. But an anti-fragile system is something else entirely. Under stress, it does not just survive, it grows stronger. Your immune system is anti-fragile, exposure to a pathogen makes it more robust. Your muscles are anti-fragile, lifting heavy weights breaks them down so they can rebuild stronger than before. The ultimate goal is to build a mind that is not merely resilient, but truly anti-fragile. A mind that feeds on challenge. To do this, we must learn the ancient art of voluntary hardship. To understand this principle in its most extreme and effective form, we must travel back in time to ancient Greece, to a society that engineered itself to be the antithesis of comfort, Sparta. The Spartans are remembered as the most formidable warriors of the ancient world. But their strength was not an accident of birth. It was the product of a brutal, lifelong, and intentional system of training known as the agoge. The entire purpose of the agoge was to forge citizens and soldiers of unmatched mental toughness and resilience. It operated on a simple, powerful premise: make the hardships of training so severe that the chaos of the battlefield feels like a relief. It was a factory for forging human weapons, and its primary tool was deliberate hardship. From the age of 7, Spartan boys were removed from their families and entered this relentless system. They were given minimal food to encourage cunning and resourcefulness. They were made to train barefoot to toughen their feet. They slept on hard beds of reeds they had to gather themselves. They were subjected to constant physical contests and grueling marches. The system was designed to systematically strip away every layer of comfort and teach one core lesson: you are stronger than you think, and you can endure far more than you believe. This was not sadism, it was stress inoculation on a societal scale. By voluntarily and repeatedly exposing themselves to cold, hunger, pain, and fatigue in a controlled environment, they were building psychological calluses. They were expanding their capacity for suffering, so that when they faced the involuntary suffering of war, it was familiar territory. The Spartan warrior, symbolized by his shield and spear, was not fearless because he was ignorant of pain. He was fearless because he had made pain his intimate companion. He had practiced dying to his own comfort every single day of his life. This principle is timeless. The elite special forces operators of the modern world undergo a similar, if more refined, process during their selection phases, like the infamous Hell Week. The Stoic philosophers of ancient Rome, like Seneca, practiced this in their daily lives. Seneca would periodically dress in rags, eat meager food, and sleep on the floor, deliberately living as if he were in poverty. He did not do this because he enjoyed it, he did it to inoculate himself against the fear of losing his wealth. By voluntarily experiencing a lesser version of what he feared, he proved to himself that he could survive it. He was building his own Spartan shield. You are not a Spartan warrior, and you are not a Roman senator. But you are fighting your own battles against the anxieties and fears of the 21st century. To win, you must create your own personal, modern agoge. You must deliberately introduce sources of positive stress into your life to become anti-fragile. Here are 3 ways to begin building your own Spartan shield. Tool 1. The Comfort Challenge. This is the most direct way to practice voluntary hardship. Your task is to systematically and temporarily remove a modern comfort from your life. Take cold showers for a week instead of hot ones. The first 30 seconds will feel like a shock to your system, but the feeling of mastering your own primal instinct to flinch from the cold will leave you with a sense of invigorated self-control that lasts for hours. You can try intermittent fasting, deliberately experiencing and mastering the minor discomfort of hunger. You can sleep on the floor for a night. You can intentionally leave your smartphone at home when you go for a walk, training yourself to endure the discomfort of being alone with your own thoughts. Each time you do this, you send a powerful message to your subconscious mind: I do not need this comfort to be okay. I am more resilient than my desire for ease. Tool 2, the Fear Rehearsal. In the last chapter, we learned to act despite fear. Now, we take it a step further. We deliberately seek out small, controlled doses of the things we fear. This is stress inoculation in its purest form. If you have a fear of social rejection, your exercise is to go to a coffee shop and ask for a 10% discount. The answer will almost certainly be no. The goal is not to get the discount, the goal is to experience the mild sting of a low-stakes rejection and realize that you survive. It turns the monster of rejection in your mind into a manageable, non-lethal event in reality. If you fear public speaking, join a local Toastmasters club. If you fear looking foolish, go to a dance class. By voluntarily stepping into a small version of your fear, you retrain your nervous system and expand your capabilities. Tool 3, the Physical Forge. The most accessible forge for building mental toughness is your own body. Strenuous physical exercise is deliberate practice for the soul. When you are lifting a heavy weight and your muscles are burning, and you push out one more repetition than you thought you could, you are doing more than building muscle. You are forging a new identity. You are teaching yourself, at a cellular level, that you can persist through discomfort. When you are running and your lungs are screaming for you to stop, but you push on for another quarter mile, you are casting a vote for the person you want to become. This physical resilience translates directly into every other area of your life. The voice that tells you to quit in the gym is the same voice that tells you to give up on your business or to avoid a difficult conversation. By learning to defeat it in the physical realm, you learn how to defeat it in all realms. This is how to build self-belief that is real, earned, and unshakable. The purpose of these practices is not to live a miserable life. It is the opposite. It is to build a level of inner strength that makes the inevitable hardships of life feel smaller and more manageable. It is to expand your zone of comfort so that you can operate with grace and effectiveness in almost any environment. It is to move from being the fragile teacup that shatters under pressure, to being the anti-fragile mind that seeks out pressure to grow. This is the peak of our mountain. This is the final expression of the unbreakable mind. It is a mind that has not only mastered its emotions, but uses the very pressures of the world to increase its own strength. The 4 pillars are now in place. From the Watchtower, you learn to observe. In the interrogation, you learn to deconstruct. In the reframe, you learn to reconstruct. And here, in the forge, you have learned to act and to strengthen. The architecture is complete. But a fortress, no matter how strong, is only useful if it is maintained. A discipline is only powerful if it is lived. The final step of our journey is not to learn a new skill, but to understand how to integrate all that you have learned into a single, cohesive, and lifelong practice, ensuring that the unbreakable mind is not just a state you have achieved, but a person you have become. Outro: The Unbreakable Mind, a Lifelong Practice. And so, we arrive not at an end, but at a profound and powerful beginning. The scaffolding we have used to construct your new inner world can now be taken down. The dust of deconstruction has settled, and the fire of the forge has cooled. I want you to take a moment and stand in the silence within the structure you have just built. Feel its weight, its integrity, its quiet resilience. This is a space that has always been yours, but you have now claimed it. You have built it. Our journey together began with a single, courageous act, the choice to be still. We ascended to the Watchtower, where you first learned to separate yourself from the chaotic storm of your emotions. You discovered the sacred space between stimulus and response, and in that space, you found your freedom. From that high place of calm, you found the strength to descend into the interrogation room. There, you became the detective of your own mind, turning the bright, unflinching light of logic onto the shadows, exposing the fraudulent beliefs and cognitive distortions that had dictated your reality for years. This act of liberation created a void, which you then learned to fill as the master architect in the reframe. You discovered the beautiful philosophy of kintsugi, the alchemy of perspective that allows you to take the shattered pieces of your failures and setbacks and mend them with the gold of a new, more powerful narrative. And finally, with a new mind fully architected for strength, you stepped into the heat of the forge. You learned that courage is not the absence of fear, but acting in its presence. You discovered that true, evidence-based confidence is not a gift, but a reputation you earn with yourself, and you learn to use hardship itself as the very tool to make you stronger. The 4 pillars are now in place. But an unbreakable mind is not a static monument to be admired. It is a living, breathing citadel that must be inhabited, maintained, and strengthened through a lifelong practice. So how do you live this new way of being? Imagine your day tomorrow. The alarm rings. The old you might have hit snooze, seeking a few more moments of comfortable oblivion. The new you, the architect, recognizes this as the first opportunity of the day to enter the forge. You might use the 5-second rule, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and place your feet on the floor before the old habit of resistance takes hold. You might even undertake a comfort challenge, stepping into a cold shower to inoculate yourself against discomfort and start the day with a clear, undeniable victory. Later, you are on your way to work when you see a stressful email from your boss on your phone. The old you would have fused with the anxiety instantly, your heart pounding, your mind catastrophizing for the rest of the commute. The new you feels the initial jolt of fear, but immediately ascends to the Watchtower. You observe the feeling and say, "Ah, this is anxiety." Then you become the detective. You interrogate the thought, "What is the evidence that this is a disaster?" You realize there is none. What is a more rational interpretation? You conclude, "This is an issue that requires my calm, focused attention when I get to my desk." You have just navigated an internal emergency with the skill of a master. In a meeting, a project you've worked on receives harsh criticism. The old you would have personalized it, feeling the hot shame of failure and replaying the moment for days. The new you becomes the scribe. You hear the criticism not as a verdict on your worth, but as valuable, if painful, data. You see the cracks in your strategy, and you immediately begin to think about how you will repair them with the gold of this new knowledge, making the next version of the project even stronger. You have reframed failure into a crucial step toward mastery. At the end of the day, you take 2 minutes with your evidence log. You write down, "Faced a stressful email and stayed calm. Handled criticism without collapsing. Honored my commitment to my morning forge." You are closing the loop, providing your subconscious mind with irrefutable proof that you are no longer the person you used to be. You are building, day by day, an unbreakable reputation with yourself. This is what the lifelong practice looks like. It is 1,000 small, conscious choices that accumulate into a life of profound strength and quiet command. This path, while personal, is not meant to be walked in isolation. Every great school of thought, from the Stoics of Rome to the master craftsmen of Japan, thrived in community. The work is yours to do, but the journey is one we share. The greatest testament to your own strength is your ability to recognize and empower it in others. If this framework has provided you with value, consider sharing this journey. Think of one person in your life who you believe is ready to stop being a tenant in their own mind and become its architect, and pass this blueprint on to them. True wisdom is not hoarded, it is shared, and in sharing it, its power in your own life multiplies. By demonstrating your support for this work, you help this philosophy of strength reach others who are searching for an alternative to a life of reaction and fear. And to continue your own development and explore other frameworks for building an elite mind, I invite you to subscribe to Prestige Mind Collections. Join a community of individuals committed not to the pursuit of ease, but to the deliberate and deeply rewarding construction of an exceptional life. You are now the architect. You hold the blueprint. The world outside will continue to test your structure with its storms and its pressures. Let it. Let the winds blow and the rains fall. They are not threats to your foundation, they are opportunities to test its strength, to see where the gold of your repairs gleams brightest. For you have not built a brittle fortress of stone, but a living citadel of anti-fragile strength, a mind that does not just endure the pressures of the world, but uses them to become stronger. Walk forward from this day with a quiet confidence, knowing that the most powerful and reliable structure in your life is the one you have built within. This has been the Unbreakable Mind, how to master your emotions, overcome fear, stress, and self-doubt. From all of us at Prestige Mind Collections, thank you for listening.